No matter your age, your plan for retirement can start today. From the News Channel 5 Network, this is the Retirement Report.
Good morning. Welcome to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. We're going to be talking about some issues today that I've been following in the news regarding the economy, what impact it may have on the markets, and of course what impact it may have on you and your savings, your investments. You know, one of the things I ran across recently that I hadn't seen in a while, and it kind of reminded me of this, was Warren Buffett, in one of his annual reports to his stockholders, said that, you know, rule number one for he and his staff and firm was basically never lose money. Okay, rule number one, never lose money. And rule number two, never forget rule number one. And this brought me to, you know, sometimes when I'm sitting with clients, one of the things that I ask them is, can you afford to lose any money? You know, or how much can you afford to lose? And for most, I can't afford to lose anything, right? I was sitting with some folks just recently, in fact, and asked that very question, and both of them looked at each other and was like, well, we don't want to lose any money, and we can't afford to lose any money. And when we're doing planning and we go through someone's plan and we determine for them ways that, based on their current income, their current assets, their expenses, their liabilities, when we look at all of that and we determine that, you know, we can very safely assure that you'll never run out of money, that you'll be able to, in fact, maintain your current lifestyle, and in many instances even add to that lifestyle, add in some additional fun money to go out and do some traveling or whatever it is that you want to do in retirement, and never have to worry about running out of money, and do that safely. In other words, do it with less risk than you're currently taking, assuring, in fact, that you will never lose any money. All right? In fact, again, now here's something else. Maybe you think this wouldn't happen to you. Maybe you think, you know, your portfolio, especially based on the last 5 years, maybe you think it's done quite well and it's going to continue. And this is one of the unfortunate pitfalls sometimes that can happen, is this complacency when we've had a run in the market of almost 5 years, basically, that we've currently had. And even with the volatility this year, people are still thinking, you know, it's kind of, again, I'll use Warren Buffett again in this one. He said a lot of times when it comes to with people, especially in their thinking of market timing, or they're thinking in terms of, you know, when they need to maybe change into the phase that they're going to be going into. So an example is when you're accumulating money, you're trying to make as much as you can, you're leaving that savings alone because you're living on the income you're getting from your wages. In retirement, when the wages go away, and maybe you have a pension or maybe just Social Security, but you're going to need at some point in time, maybe immediately or maybe a little down the road, start to take from those savings. So you're going to move from the accumulation phase of retirement, where you're just trying to build up and save as much as you can and earn as much as you can on those savings, to where you're going to be in the distribution phase, where you're now going to be taking income, and you got to be a lot more conservative with regard to those investments. And what Buffett had said, in fact, was people that are sitting there waiting to see what's going to happen in the market, they're trying to get every ounce out before they make a change maybe, or get into an appropriate mix for them because it's been doing so well. It's like they're Cinderella. They know at midnight that when the clock strikes 12, that it's going to be pumpkins and mice, right? They're going to lose. But they're sitting there dancing. They hate to leave. They're having so much fun. They're doing so well. But they're dancing in a ballroom where the clocks have no hands. In other words, there's no way of knowing when it's going to happen, is there? You can't look up and say, okay, I've got another 5 minutes and then I'll scoot. You just don't have that luxury. We don't know when the next downturn's going to be. We know there will be one. And we know, here's the other part, is what's the recovery phase. I've done some research this past week that was quite eye-opening, and it started with a newsletter I'm going to share with you about what the basically it opened my eyes even to some statistics that I wasn't aware of, and then I started researching to see just how valid this was. And so and it brought up another question, which is, what if something you believe to be true? Maybe you're looking at your current retirement plan, your current portfolio, and you're thinking, and your savings, and you're thinking, I'm in pretty good shape. I don't think I have to worry. I think my portfolio is doing well. And the question I would pose to you is, if something you believe to be true turned out not to be true, when would you want to know that? All right. Would you want to know it after it's too late to do something about it? Or would you like to know it well in advance to where you could, in fact, make the necessary changes? And this is some of what we're going to open up today. You're welcome to give a call, by the way, 737-plus, 737-7587. There's the number on your screen if you have any questions, comments, would like to get a little information about some of the things we're going to be covering this morning. In addition, I'm going to offer up to you an ability to, in fact, get this, take a look at your situation, find out what is true about your current portfolio, about your current retirement and investing plans, and see if, in fact, what you believe to be true is true. All right, and we'll talk about that a little later. All right. This is the newsletter that I was going to share with you, and let me get to this part. This gentleman, basically, he puts out a national newsletter. It's one of the ones that I receive, and one of the things he talks about is Bloomberg just released an article declaring the world's governments had just gone over $100 trillion in debt. This is across the world. There are several things that are remarkable about that milestone. First, we were only $70 trillion in debt in 2007. So we have basically increased the debt by 50% in just the last 7 years. If we continue on that path, and not only is that likely, it looks very much like it's actually accelerating, we will have the governments of the world $150 trillion in debts over the next 7 years. So the more money governments need to service their debts, the less money that's available for private sector for growth, expansion, job creation, etc. And that brings up another article. I saw that and I thought that was kind of interesting, and we're going to talk a little more about the unemployment rate and about inflation and how the government numbers, how they calculate today versus what the way they calculated things in the past. And this is USA Today, and the headline basically is, where are the jobs? Feelings of despair, and this by the way, this is just from a few days ago. This was Sunday's paper. Feelings and despair and helplessness overwhelm many of those left behind by long-term unemployment, 3.7 million and counting. You get frustrated and you start fading back. Who's going to hire me now? I've been out of the workforce for nearly 4 years. This was a lady in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, age 60. Now, of course, for a lot of us, that's one of the things that's a big concern. As we get older, that's going to be even tougher. There are only, and they are the ones left behind by a recovery that has created 8 million jobs since U.S. payrolls bottomed out in 2010. Nearly 5 years after the recession ended, 36% of the unemployed, a near record 3.7 million people, according to the Labor Department's report on Friday, are counted as long-term unemployed because they've been searching for work for 6 months or more. About 620,000, close to the population of Boston, have been looking 3 years or longer. Millions more have been jobless at least that long, but have just stopped searching. The longest suffering of long-term unemployed are the dispirited faces of a labor market axiom: the more time someone is out of work, the harder it is to find a job. Skills erode or grow outdated. Job applicants with long gaps in their work histories are widely discriminated against by employers, studies show. A barrier to entry that rises as years go by. Hope flickers after years of fruitless job hunts This is one of the toughest parts. You know, when you look at this and you see some of the things in the news, and they talk about possibly, maybe you see news stories that are talking about how things are improving. Well, it's all relative, I guess. As I think it was Ronald Reagan said, if a neighbor loses his job, that's a recession. If you lose your job, that's a depression. Well, there's a lot of folks and a lot of families out there that can relate to this firsthand. We're going to talk about how these jobless numbers, how they're measured today versus in the past, what they really are, had they been measured the way they were back then, and the same with inflation, which is especially critical to how that may impact you in the years to come. So join us here. We're going to get into that and more on the Retirement Report.